My part in the beginning, welcome everyone to this webinar. Part of our initiative from Altavia in 2022, we started to increase our partner business, and today we're happy to speak with Avalara about the Europe e-invoicing updates. Interesting topic in Europe, of course, and welcome Jake and Tarek. Thanks for making this possible. Maybe you switch to the next slide, please. Can I do this? No, you can. Thank you. Just a little quick update on Altavia. Of course, many of you know us, and some don't. So we are a solution provider since the first moment here in Germany, in the DACH region. We still are. We're also SDN partner. We develop apps in NetSuite, and we purely focus on NetSuite. We achieved quite a few projects in the last 15 years. Same with the team. The team grew. I was the first employee. Now we are 48 from 21 nationalities. That's quite. I'm pretty proud of this to be able to cover the whole world from El Salvador to Philippines, and have these people, or we call it onshore here in Germany, employed with us. So no outsourcing. And the next slides, they show how we grew in 2021 to 2022. And if we are adding more and more partners to cover, their needs. The next slide shows, wraps it up what we did. It's like, we're starting this partnership with Avalara. I think it was even last year. And so with all these products, we want to be the first level support partner to answer the questions. Of course, all these different products we cannot handle. We cannot handle VAT or taxes in the US and South America and everywhere as good as an Avalara person can do it. But we have an idea of a lot of things. So at least the first ones to talk to. And so this is why we're doing it. So we need people in our team to be able to be assigned to this topic. So that's why we have so many. Next things are coming up is the DOAG event. As you can see, Avalara is also premium sponsor there, and also Tarek and team will be there to present the topic. So save the date for November 20th, 21st in Nuremberg. Very important event outside Suite World. Nothing else like this comparable. So a lot of partners will be there, a lot of customers, a lot of sessions. And with that, I'll hand it over to Tarek. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Martin. Absolute pleasure to be here today to present European e-invoicing updates, what's new and what's next. So just a bit about myself. So my name is Tarek Mahmood. I'm a strategic alliance manager here at Avalara. My background is primarily in the business management software space, which spans ERP, CRM, business intelligence, supply chain, and indirect tax solutions. And in fact, I did actually spend about 5 years of my tenure working directly for NetSuite. So I do know the NetSuite ecosystem quite well. And I am joined by my colleague Jake, who will introduce himself later in the presentation. So I'll quickly touch on who Avalara are. So a quick background to us as a company. We were founded in 2004 in the US to help businesses manage their complicated US sales tax compliance needs. Fast forward to today, we have 22 office locations globally, which then spans 4 continents. And we do support over 30,000 customers across 193 countries. So as a global company ourselves, we are in a prime position to support our global customers achieve compliance, reduce risk, and streamline their indirect tax compliance processes using our cloud-based tax automation solutions. This slide shows the end-to-end indirect tax solutions Avalara offers. We can help businesses register for VAT, GST, and US sales tax. We have our flagship solution called Avatax, which is a global tax engine capable of calculating US sales tax, VAT, GST, as well as calculating the correct customs duties on cross-border shipments. Our e-invoicing solutions supports over 60 countries across business to government, business to business, and business to consumer transactions. We can support different modules of e-invoicing from clearance. We can generate QR codes, PDFs. We can connect to various networks, be it private and public, including the Peppol network. And then we also have solutions for returns and reporting, which businesses can use for their internal usage or via our managed service. So the agenda for today's webinar, I'll start with looking at the mandate timeline, what's happened across the globe and within Europe over the last decade. I'll then do a round robin update for the countries listed on this slide. Then I'll hand over to my colleague Jake, who will provide a high-level demo of our ELR solution. In ELR, in Avalara terms, stands for e-invoicing and live reporting. Looking at the timeline, so Brazil was the trailblazer introducing e-invoicing over a decade ago, swiftly followed by other Latin American businesses. In Europe, when e-invoicing was introduced, it was mainly around public procurement, so business to government mandates, or we have seen some new forms of digital reporting to give tax authorities sight of individual transactions. Italy was the first European country to introduce business-to-business e-invoicing mandates in 2019 using the SDI platform. Over the last couple of years, we have seen more and more mandates across Europe introduced, as well as pilots, proposals, platforms being developed to support e-invoicing mandates. From January this year, Serbia became the latest European country to introduce business-to-business e-invoicing. And we have started to see countries across the APAC region also do the same. And then next year is the transformational year for e-invoicing across Europe. And I'll be touching on some of the impacted countries in the following slides. There are different models for e-invoicing. I mentioned Peppol earlier, which is a great example of an interoperability module. That's based on service providers sitting in the middle, forming two corners of the four-corner model. They will ensure interoperability by ensuring the invoice meets a standard, which is then shared through a secure network the service providers have access to. Another model is live VAT reporting. This isn't really e-invoicing, but it's a subset of it. It's the reporting of the invoice data to the tax authorities in real time. A great example of this is Hungary with their live reporting regime. In Hungary, there isn't a mandate for e-invoicing. However, when the invoice is issued, the invoice data has to be reported within a predetermined schema as an XML to the Hungarian tax authority, so they are getting all the transactional data themselves. We then have a clearance model where the tax authority wants to see the invoice data before the supplier is allowed to issue the invoice to the customer. This has been the case in Brazil. It is a common model because tax authorities want to validate and approve invoices before they are sent to the customer. It also allows them to carry out checks on the authenticity of the issuer. Are they VAT registered, for example? And that's often supported by digital signature, as well as checking the authenticity and integrity of the invoice content. And then within the clearance model, under the centralized model, it's actually the tax authority that sends the invoice onto the customer. This is how the SDI platform in Italy works. This is a great example of one of the changes next year because Poland and Poland's KSeF platform is a centralized model. In Poland next year, every single invoice looks the same. There is a common XML to meet the Polish standard. However, it is the KSeF platform that converts the XML into a human readable PDF. It's in Polish and everything looks the same. The customer logs onto the platform to retrieve the PDF or using an e-invoicing service provider to automate the retrieval of the PDF. And then a future module is leveraging the interoperability module, but including the tax authority. So let's talk about France. France's new mandates will impact over 4 million businesses. France will be mandating mandatory B2B invoicing. It was initially planned for July next year. However, it has been recently delayed by at least a year, with indications actually leaning towards January 2026. There is already a mandate for B2G e-invoicing using the Chorus Pro platform. That platform is being revamped, rebuilt to create a new PPF, public portal, that will be used as part of this new mandate. The mandate will cover the issuing, transmission, and receipt of all B2B invoices in a mandated form. However, there will not be just one format. There will be a choice of 3 core formats that will be supported by all providers, and there will be scope for industry-specific formats too. Businesses in France will have the choice to use an approved third party, so a commercial e-invoicing provider, or a business platform that has the functionality. That's known as a partner dematerialization platform, or PDP for short. At the moment, all service providers who have declared interest are candidate PDPs, and Avalara is a candidate PDP. Smaller businesses will be able to connect direct to the public invoicing portal, the PPF. The French authorities, though, have made it clear this is really only designed for the smallest businesses in France. Businesses who have only simple invoices, therefore not many to issue and receive. The mandate also supports e-reporting, which is a common trend we are seeing with new mandates across Europe. As well as the domestic B2B transactions within e-invoicing, there needs to be e-reporting of B2C sales within France, cross-border transactions, as well as payment data. And payment data is key because in France, that helps drive tax points for services. French businesses will no longer be able to send invoices direct to customers. You can no longer print and post. You can no longer send standard PDFs on email. There either needs to be involvement from the public platform or private PDPs. The choice of platform to receive invoices is a commercial choice and the decision to be made by the business. The PPF will only provide basic core functionality. For more enhanced functionality, usability, value-added services, you will be better served by private service providers. There are multiple acceptable formats, so to some extent, choice and flexibility compared to some other mandates where there is no choice. Very strict formats which need to be met. All 3 formats are actually compliant implementations of EU e-invoicing standard EN 16931. All partner platforms, PDPs, will offer all 3 core formats, and that is Universal Business Language, UBL, Cross-Industry Invoice, CII, and FactorX, which is a hybrid PDF A3. Excuse me. FactorX is the best of both worlds. It is machine readable because it has the embedded XML code, but at the same time, it is readable and viewable to a human. There are also some content changes within the mandates. New fields need to be added to an invoice, and these need to be part of the structured data that is shared with the French tax authorities and the customer. The new content requirements include the delivery address for goods where that is different from the customer's address on the invoice. The customer's siren number also needs to be shown on the invoice. And the narrative option for payment of tax on basis of debits. I'm not going to butcher the French translation. This needs to be shown on the invoice where the supplier has opted to account for VAT on an accrual basis. There's quite a high bar in France because in terms of PDP requirements, because this has led to a lot of service providers stating that they cannot actually meet the strict requirements. So a very formal certification process, which will lead to third-party audits, documentation to be provided, a very strict cybersecurity requirement unique to France, which is a French standard, and it's all about data integrity, sovereignty of data, and it's all about data not being allowed to leave the EU. In addition, PDPs will also require an ISO 27001 certification, which is around security. And there are other factors which are on this slide. So moving on to Spain, Spanish Gazette officially published the growth law. This mandates businesses and professionals in Spain to issue and receive invoices from 2024. This was initially planned for January 1st, 2024. It was then pushed back to July 1st, 2024, like France. However, it's now looking like before January 1st, 2025 is looking unpractical. We are still waiting for the new technical requirements for the e-invoicing regime, and there are still some pieces of legislation to be approved, and this is subject to change. One of the areas of possible delays or change is due to a public consultation. The Ministry of Economic Affairs and Digital Transformation in Spain issued a consultation back in March. This posed on 32 questions looking at scope, format, interoperability, etc. The feedback will then shape the mandate, providing the granularity which is required. The other reason for the delay is the absence of technical information. The documentation was expected to be available 6 months after the passing of law, so available April this year. It is as anticipated, the specs will be released later this year. Spain does have a draft VERI FACTU software and invoice requirements. Top of the requirements, systems need to be able to generate a registration billing record at the time of the issue of an invoice or immediately prior to that. They need to add a fingerprint or hash to records, inclusion of alphanumeric code, inclusion of QR code, which will be underpinned by very specific technical and functional specs. So moving on to Poland, which I touched on earlier in the presentation. So Poland is introducing mandatory B2B e-invoicing from July 1st next year. The platform has been developed and is live, being used for business-to-government transactions and also business-to-business transactions on a voluntary basis. It's an XML standard, but a local Polish XML, so FA_VAT. This version, or the version 2 standard, moves to production, I think this month actually, yeah, from September this month. So this is likely to replace JPK, the existing digital SAFT transactional data requirements. So moving on to Benelux, so Luxembourg and Belgium. These are two countries who have recently introduced mandatory business-to-government e-invoicing mandates in a phased approach. In Luxembourg, it is based on the size of the company. So phase 1 was for large businesses last May, moving to medium businesses last October, and then early this year, capturing all size businesses. Belgium has implemented a similar approach, but based on the size of the contract. So phase 1 invoice contract of €241,000, decreasing to €30,000 in phase 2, and then all size contracts in phase 3. And staying in Belgium, there's lots of noise and reports of business-to-business invoicing being introduced. It has been rumoured it could come as early as next year. And finally, looking at Germany. Germany announced it has submitted a request for derogation to the European Commission to introduce mandatory B2B invoicing for domestic businesses. Germany was very clever and submitted their request based on the VEDA, VAT in the digital age, compliance, following their involvement with the VEDA design. So it is looking likely that it has a very good chance of being approved. The BMF has released a highly anticipated draft paper for discussion on the introduction of mandatory e-invoicing. This sets out further details, again talking about the scope, looking at the European e-invoicing standard, confirming it will be compliant with VEDA. The date set out is January 1st, 2025. So that ends my round robin updates. I'll now hand over to Jake, who'll provide a high-level demo of Avalara's ELR offering.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Derek, and very nice to meet all of you. My name is Jake Estes. I'm a sales engineer for Avalara. I'm based in the UK, and I primarily focus on a few of our products that Derek mentioned earlier, which include the tax engine, VAT reporting, as well as our e-invoicing and lab reporting software. So I'll give you a quick demo of it right now. If you have questions, just pop them into the chat, and Tarek and Martin can answer those. Otherwise, I can take questions afterwards. So let's get my screen open for everybody. I'm going to start off in an application called Postman. Postman is an API tool built for developers. It's not an Avalara product, but it's a way for us to kind of demonstrate the API calls that will come from NetSuite, your procurement system, if you have a satellite billing system connected to NetSuite, basically anywhere where an invoice lives, the Avalara ELR product would integrate with and would allow you to send and receive invoices from any systems that you use, okay? So here on the left-hand side of my screen, you can see I've got some sample files here. I've got some Peppol files for government procurement, but I want to focus on Poland because, as Tarek mentioned, Poland is one country that hasn't publicly announced any sort of delays yet to their program. It's still looking like it's going to be July of next year, whereas France has announced delays, Spain's considering delays. So we're going to start off and we're going to talk a little bit about the type of data that Avalara's ELR product will receive. So there's two primary components. There's what's called a metadata element, and I'll open this up here, and you can see here in the middle of my screen, this element essentially informs the routing of the transaction. So what we have here is a Polish invoice, okay? And what this tells Avalara is that this invoice needs to be received in a standard XML file from NetSuite or any other system, and then converted automatically to the Faktura file that the Polish government requires for the KSeF platform to process. The KSeF platform is the e-invoicing server, if you will, that all the invoice documents will be processed through. So with this, we know where this invoice is going, and we know what it needs to look like for the government to successfully process it and give us back our unique identifier on the invoice, okay? Below that, the second component is what's called a data element. And the data element here is just an XML representation of your invoice, okay? So this is not something that you need to be an expert on, XML, right? This is just really behind the scenes, and this is what NetSuite is going to be sending Avalara automatically. So what we have here is our invoice number in this XML file. We have our invoice date. We have both counterparties' VAT information, VAT numbers, right? We have shipping information. We have line level information. So we know, is it a product? Is it a service? Our VAT amounts, our shipping information, if it's applicable. And basically, it's a subset of information that you already have in NetSuite. Okay, it's just information that gets automatically passed through a connector to the Avalara service, okay? So we'll go ahead and we'll submit this invoice. So on this little blue button here on the upper right-hand side, we'll go ahead and submit it, okay? We are connected currently to a Polish test server, so it sometimes takes a few seconds. If you're familiar with test environments, you know, I'm sure you're aware that they can sometimes be a little bit slow, but it looks like we've got our response back. What we were looking for here is what's called a 200 response. So 200 is basically, it basically signifies that the server we're trying to connect to has successfully processed our request, okay? So 201, this is what we're looking for. We also have here an Avalara generated transaction ID. This is used for logging and things like that and troubleshooting. It's not your invoice number, but this is a good sign that we see this, okay? Now, what we can do from here as well, and you'll be able to do within the NetSuite integration and any platform you connect to, is that we can actually retrieve the invoice status. And that means you don't need to leave your ERP to confirm that the invoice was successfully sent to the government, right? Or the counterparty, whichever the mandate requires. So we'll go ahead and check the status of this invoice. Okay, we'll send out another request. Hopefully we get this 200 response back. Yep, this is what we're looking for. What we have here is confirmation from the Polish government that this invoice, okay, because remember, this is an AR invoice that we're sending to a customer. The invoice was received. You have some messaging back in Polish. I don't speak Polish, but I do know that this is basically a confirmation message that says we've successfully, you know, processed the invoice you submitted. We also have our KSeF number. So this is the government-generated alphanumeric string that's required to be basically put on the invoice. Okay, it makes auditing a lot easier for the government and things like that. So this is basically, this is a good sign, is that we have everything that's been processed, and we have our KSeF ID that we would use for invoicing. Okay, so this is the outbound invoice, and you can see all this information in the integration. Of course, you also have access to an Avalara monitor. Okay, and the Avalara monitor, hopefully you can see my screen now. I've changed. Looks like this. This is basically a way for you to log into the Avalara system and view information about the transactions you've processed through our service. Okay, so this is your home screen. This is our Insights tab here. You can see there's a couple of different tabs you have available to you. As you scroll down a little bit, you can see the different invoice statuses. So pending simply means that we're waiting on the government, right? This environment is connected to a lot of different government test servers. So sometimes invoices stall for one reason or another. But ideally, in your production systems, the pending queue would be very temporary, and over the course of a minute or perhaps 30 minutes or an hour, depending on what's going on with the government servers, this pending queue would clear out, and you'd see ideally all of your invoices go to a completion stage, right? So everything's been successfully transmitted. You do have the ability to see errors in here as well. You'll be able to see it in the integrations. You know, again, you don't have to leave NetSuite or whatever the system is, but this is basically, again, kind of a backup log. Avalara does perform a series of checks on the invoice and making sure all the data is present. You're not missing an ISO code in front of the VAT number and things like that. So we do checks on it. The government will do their own checks as well. They don't publish lists of all the data checks, but we can make some assumptions about what kind of checks they do. But basically, whether it's an Avalara generated error or a government generated error, the error information is captured here as well. But again, ideally, everything goes through to completion because we want errors to get kind of uncovered and resolved during your testing phase of this implementation. Below that, you have some dashboarding information. So you've got document volumes. This is on a weekly basis, so you can see trends within your invoicing. You can see documents by type as well. So you've got some sales and some credits in here. If you were receiving invoices through the system, you'd see AP transactions in here as well. You can also see trading partner information. So you can see how many invoices you're exchanging by trading partner. You can then go into the Documents tab, which gives you a more granular view. You can build out different filters as well. So I'll go ahead and drop this down on the left-hand side. And maybe I want to see everything that I've processed in the last 30 days. And then I can see When I click this, everything here, I've got some different color coding, pending, complete, errored out, etc. But basically, this is just meant to be a log of the invoice information that's being transmitted through Avalara, whether that's inbound or outbound invoices. You can also go into the file folder here, and you can see the technical files that we've processed. So we have our input that came from NetSuite. We have our conversion file here. That's called instruct. This is how we mapped the information in NetSuite to the government standard. And so you've got a log of that as well. You have your output file, which is just the file that got sent to the government. So Tarek mentioned earlier, France has 3 different options for transmitting invoices to them, right? So this could be like a FactorX file, and you could download this as a PDF with the embedded XML. You can download this as XML or whatever the mandated formats are, okay? Now we sent this invoice to a Polish customer, okay? So now let's put ourselves in the recipient's shoes. So if I'm a Polish customer, when I receive the invoice from you, I'll be able to retrieve it from the Polish government. I'll be able to retrieve it in one of 2 ways. If I have a system like Avalara set up, I'll receive it automatically, right, through the electronic transmission and the integration with my ERP. If I don't have a connection and I just want to log into the Polish government system, that system, it looks something like this. This is the Polish test environment. Let's go back to Postman for just a quick second, though. Okay, so here we have our KSeF ID. Let's look at the last 4 digits. We have 9806, okay? So this is the invoice that we're looking for. We'll go back in here and we'll go to our invoice list, okay? This is a government server, so it's a government environment, so it's very lightweight. It doesn't do a lot. It's not an ERP. It's basically just a way for you to view invoices. And we'll go to our purchase invoices here. And here we have, oh, it was a B, not an 8, so I apologize. But here we have 9B06. So this is the invoice that we received from you as the customer. Okay, and now I can go through and I can download this, but I basically have a PDF copy, got my KSeF ID, okay, and all the information that was legally required to be put on the invoice. I can hit download, have it stored offline somewhere on some kind of shared environment. But basically, that's the workflow, is from sending to receiving invoices, either from the government directly or through Avalara. And again, if you receive invoices through a system like the Polish KSeF or the Italian SDI system, you'll receive those invoices directly from the government via a portal like this or integration. If it's Peppol, right, that invoice will appear automatically as well, and you won't have like a portal or anything to log into. But I think for demo purposes, this is a good way to show the workflow. So that's Avalara's e-invoicing product. Happy to take questions. I think there was one in the chat. Oh, that was just Tarek. But yeah, if you have any questions.
Yeah, I can see. Thank you, Jake. Does Avalara need multiple integrations for multiple countries, or is it a single integration for all countries?
Yeah, good question. It's a single integration, which is a lot easier long term. What we found is that historically businesses have said, hey, Italy's got an e-invoicing mandate. Let's go source an Italian supplier to help us with this mandate. And they go find a local software company in Milan or Rome or wherever, and that solves their Italian e-invoicing problem. And then all of a sudden, Poland comes out and says Poland's doing e-invoicing, right? And now the business says, okay, we're going to go source a Polish supplier for this. And now you're dealing with different integrations for different countries. So when you use a supplier like Avalara, you're dealing with one integration to one service provider. And then Avalara takes care of all of the integrations that are required to different government services. So if you build your integration or you install a connector to Avalara, you're solving your global e-invoicing problem, because you don't have to worry about sourcing technology in each country. You can just say, you call up your account manager at Avalara and you say, hey, we want to add Italy, or we want to add France, or whatever the case may be. And then we just tune that up on your subscription. So it's a lot easier that way.
Okay. Next question. Are there any changes to B2B transactions within the EU? For example, sending an invoice from a German company to one in Poland?
Yeah, so not currently, but there's the VAT in the Digital Age initiative, which is the European Union's attempt to standardize electronic invoicing. There's a lot in the we call it the VITA, or I call it the VITA package, VAT in the Digital Age. E-invoicing is one component of it. What they're doing is introducing basically a pan-EU Peppol system. It looks a lot like Peppol in the current regulations, which will allow businesses to exchange invoices electronically. There's also an electronic reporting component, which means that basically you no longer file EC listings. This initiative is attempting to replace EC listings. So invoices will just get reported automatically. And then there's a few other things in there for marketplaces and B2C transactions, but the digitization efforts are focused on e-invoicing and reporting. Unfortunately, you still have to do Intrastat, and other things, but EC listings are one piece that they're attempting to remove under this initiative, and the final phase of VAT in the Digital Age currently is scheduled for 2028. So by 2028, the EU would like to have this program fully implemented. So there's still several years, but I think it's an important piece to pay attention to. And Avalara will support the digital requirements for VAT in the Digital Age through our software. So if you're already working with Avalara, that transition and being compliant with VITA will be a lot easier and quicker.
Okay, thanks for that. Another one comes from Alina. For AR perspective, my understanding is that Avalara can connect directly to NetSuite. What about AP? Can a procurement program like Coupa can be interposted prior to the NetSuite post for invoicing, I mean?
Yeah, good question. So most of our customers, that they don't work exclusively in their ERP, right? They'll have other satellite systems on the AP or AR side or inventory management or whatever. And so if that's the case, you have two options. One is there's, a pre-built connector available. Think of it like an app you just install in that system. We also have standardized set of APIs available. So if there is not a connector, you'd be able to build an integration or have a systems integrator such as Alta build an integration for you that would be compatible with your different sort of satellite systems like Coupa.
Okay. Yeah, and the $1 million question, all of this is for free?
It is not for free. Tarek, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, as much as businesses would love Avalara to give it away for free, unfortunately, we cannot do that. So the main criteria would be to understand the volume of invoices that will be going through our solution. So yeah, obviously on this call, I can't give you a figure because different companies have different volumes of invoices. But during our discovery session, we would understand, how many invoices would need to go through our solution. And off the back of that, we would then be able to provide you a cost because we have different tiers. So I don't know what the tiers are, but just say, for example, you have 12,000 invoices going through the system, that may then fall within the 10 to 15,000 tiers. So yeah, during the discovery session, we can learn more about the volume of invoices and then come back to you with pricing.
Okay, and what's a normal project size to implement the solution?
Project size meaning like countries, things like
that?
Well,
let's say a customer just wants one country for e-invoicing setup. Where does that start from the Avalara side to implement this?
Oh, sure. So if we're talking about a single country for a single legal entity and it's AP and AR,
okay.
If there's a pre-built integration available, you're looking at a lot quicker timeline because basically all you're doing is you're installing an app, you're doing some configuration, running your tests, and then going live. That can be done in a couple of months. I think it's like any software implementation. A lot of the elapsed time is done in testing. So it might be that you want to test for a week, a month, whatever. Depends on the business and their sort of policies for external software and testing. But nevertheless, yeah, I think a couple of months. If you're dealing with, 3 different systems, 2 of them are custom API projects, one's a connector, but it's still one country. You know, the custom engineering time is going to take up more of the implementation, and you know, that might be a few more months between design, build, and test. But yeah, I think, you know, regardless, I think it could be done, you know, in both scenarios between, I think, 2 and 5 months. Yeah.
I think that gives the idea. It heavily depends on customer setup and demands, and it's not something that you do in 1 week. That's
right.
You have to think about it, have to go through a discovery with us, with you, with whoever, and check what you need, and then come up with a plan to set this up. It's not like an ERP implementation, but it's not like setting up something real quick.
Yeah, definitely not a multi-year project. You're looking at well under a year, you know, so even 6 months, even under 6 months for something like this.
Yeah. Okay. With that, I can say, happy to repeat. Avalara's premium sponsor of DOAC in November, and we'll also speak about the e-invoicing topic again. And so you're of course invited to join this show in November, and speak to the people in person and learn, and maybe ask these questions for your company on how much it could be for your company, right? This what you need. So it's probably a very good opportunity to come. With that, I would say can only thank you for today's message. Thank you, Tarek, for making this possible. Thank you, Jake, for the great demo and insights of the tool. Very, very informative. We'll share these details. There's the recording. I guess Tarek will send this out. And happy day from my side. Welcome to any next webinars. Watch out, they are coming. And watch out for social media activities on all these upcoming webinars and DOAC posts for the future. Thank you from my side.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And Martin obviously shares his contact details beginning of the presentation. Mine are on the screen now. So if you do have any questions, please do reach out to myself or Martin. And as Martin mentioned, I'll be sharing the recording later on as well. But thank you very much. Have a good day.
Good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.